It's 22:30 GMT, and these are the headlines on Al Jazeera. Forces loyal to Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi have launched new airstrikes on the eastern oil towns of Ras al-Nouf and Brega. Rebel forces are reported to be retreating from Ras al-Nouf. The son of Libya's leader is warning rebel fighters they face a heavy defeat by government forces. But foreign ministers from the Arab Gulf states are adding their voices to mounting international pressure on the Libyan regime. They say Gaddafi's government has lost its legitimacy. Saif al-Islam's comments came after NATO Secretary General said the alliance plans to move warships to the Mediterranean. NATO defence ministers are in Brussels, where they've been discussing possible military action in Libya. But Anders Fogh Rasmussen said NATO still needs a clear legal mandate to enforce a no-fly zone over the country. Well, France says it recognises the Opposition National Council as the only legitimate representation of the Libyan people. Paris has also announced its intention to open a French embassy in the city of Benghazi, the seat of the Libyan uprising. Saudi Arabia's Interior Ministry says 2 protesters and a policeman were injured after police fired into the air in the eastern city of Qatif. According to the ministry, police reacted after protesters attacked policemen. Demonstrators there have been holding rallies calling for political change, as well as the release of 9 political prisoners over the past 2 weeks. Websites have called for a day of rage on Friday. Saudi authorities say they won't tolerate any protests. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has had its worst day in 7 months, falling nearly 2% on Thursday. Concerns about protests and instability in major oil-producing countries contributed to the poor performance. Congressional hearing in the United States into radicalization of America's Muslims has led to widespread accusations of Islamophobia. But Republican Congressman Peter King says the purpose of the hearing is to inform, not to inflame. Alassane Ouattara says the African Union has endorsed him as the rightful leader of Côte d'Ivoire. He made the declaration at an African Union summit taking place in Ethiopia. It's the first time Ouattara has left Côte d'Ivoire since the political standoff began. The Dalai Lama is announcing he'll step down as political head of the exiled Tibetan movement. He says it's time for a freely elected leader to take over. China says the move is part of the Dalai Lama's plot to split the region. More news in half an hour. Stay with us here on Al Jazeera.
China is home to a staggering 173 million people suffering from mental illness, but very few receive care with a chronic shortage of funds, specialists and mental health facilities. A recent spate of violent attacks by those needing psychiatric care has turned the spotlight on the victims and the broken families left behind. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we asked just how is China addressing the needs of the mentally ill?
In a village outside Tangshan in northern China, Di Ruisheng is a desperate man. His 35-year-old son, Di Jian, suffers from schizophrenia. Widowed and unable to afford any more hospital treatment, he alone bears the burden for caring for his son. Some days, Di Jian takes his antipsychotic medication. At times, he refuses and occasionally turns violent. The day before our visit, he flew into a rage, attacking his father and destroying their television set.
I really don't know what to do. He curses at me and beats me. How can we continue our lives since no one can deal with such a psychopath?
Dija An's worsening condition has put the entire village on edge. Neighbors complain he has thrown bricks through their windows, broken into their homes, and once attacked them.
I feel really scared when I'm home alone. Sometimes he breaks glass, other times he carries a huge stick around and even comes into the house with it. Everyone in the village is frightened of him.
I think he's a threat to our family. Sometimes I think about dealing with it using extreme measures. We've even thought about breaking his legs so he cannot go out anymore.
Di Rui Sheng has been forced to take extreme measures of his own. He's built a makeshift cage where he can lock up his son whenever he goes away to appeal to local officials for help.
I don't have any other choice. I want to give the authorities a written appeal about my situation, but I can't let him stay alone. I have to lock him up so that he won't go anywhere else.
Dija An has been treated in hospital twice, but his father says it's no longer an option. 1 month of hospital care costs nearly $1,200 US, an impossible sum for a pensioner living on $10 a month. His son's illness has left Di Rui Sheng financially and emotionally bankrupt.
I thought of hanging myself with a rope, but I was afraid that no one would take care of him, and that he'd be an even bigger menace to society if I died. All I can do is cry alone at home. No one would take care of him instead of me. My other son and daughters have other illnesses of their own. All the money that they gave me has been spent on medicine. I'm completely helpless.
Dee's family, like many others here coping with mental illness, has fallen through the cracks of China's mental health care system. It's an area critics say is plagued by a chronic lack of resources, a shortage of professional training, and too little financial assistance for those in need.
The hospitalization of the mentally ill places all the economic charges on the families. If the families don't have the capacity to pay, then they can't send the mental patients to hospital for treatment. Thus, many such patients can't receive medical care. This is one of the significant systematic defects of this issue.
According to a study in the British medical journal The Lancet, more than 90% of an estimated 170 million Chinese with mental disorders get no professional help. Most never seek it, either because they don't recognize their condition or for fear of public shame. For those who choose to get help, professionals are scarce. There is only one psychiatrist for every 80,000 Chinese.
Compared to other countries in the world, this figure is quite low. There are not enough professional mental health practitioners in China.
Chu Hongzhong is one of China's leading psychiatric researchers